All right, we're in chapter 43 of Ezekiel. Rounding out the process of understanding the future temple, at least its design. I think there's going to be a lot of things that we don't understand from this prophecy. There's a lot of things about the prophecy I don't claim to understand. A lot of things I'm on the fence about. A lot of things I do understand. But I think I'm going to be thoroughly surprised at some of it when I see it in its grandeur, and it's far greater than I ever imagined. Remember, the prophet has been carried away in the spirit into the heavenlies to see what that future temple is going to look like. In the last few chapters, he's been getting a description. Or giving a description, rather. It says, then he led me to a gate, the gate that faced east. Now, before we go any farther, the gate that faced east is the gate that we were told is the gate through which the Prince of Peace must come and go. Okay, it is the princely gate. It is where Mashiach enters. He comes to the worship, he leaves to worship. It is also the gate of the king. Okay, and so we talked earlier on when it says that the nation will be ruled in the eternal kingdom. The nation of Israel will be ruled by David, and people try to turn that into, oh no, he's going to be ruled by Yeshua Mashiach. And I say, no, that's not what Scripture says. The kingdom was promised for eternity to David. Yeshua is the seed of David by adoption. But Yeshua will rule over all of the world and the things of the heavenlies. And there will be multiple nations, because it says that in that time, all the members of all the nations will come up and give worship as they were supposed to in this life. So the kingdom itself, the earthly kingdom of Israel, there's Israel, in that time will be ruled over by David in resurrected form. So this will also be the gate through which he enters to do worship. It says, and there, coming from the east, with a roar like the roar of mighty waters, was the presence of the Elohim of Israel, and the earth was lit up by his presence. If you go and you read in Revelation, it says that when the new Jerusalem descends out of the heavenlies, comes to rest on the earth, that there will no longer be a need for sunlight, because the Lamb of Elohim will be its sun. Okay, the light will emanate from him. Although I've never heard it taught, I believe we're seeing the exact same thing here. I believe that what Yochanan was seeing in his vision is exactly what Ezekiel was seeing. Okay? It says the vision was like the vision I had when I came to destroy the city, the very same vision that I had seen by the Hebar Canal. That's way at the beginning of the message, the first few chapters of his book. Forthwith, I fell on my face. I know I harp on this a lot, but I don't think we can talk about it too much. He fell which way? On his face. Okay? Not what we see today in a lot of the charismatic movement churches where somebody touches them on the forehead or they just get too excited and they fall backwards. And it looks cool, but it's absolutely never seen in Scripture. Okay? That draws attention to the self. Falling on one's face before your Creator draws attention to him. Okay? That's where I see the division. If people falling backwards and being caught and everybody moving and awing over them didn't cross that line and put the focus on the person, then I wouldn't probably feel as strongly about this as I do. When they fall on their face, They're giving worship to him. The presence of Yehovah entered the temple by the gate that faced eastward. That's what we were just talking about, because in earlier chapters we were able to establish that the presence of Yehovah is Mashiach. A spirit carried me into the inner court, and lo, the presence of Yehovah filled the temple, and I heard speech addressed to me from the temple, though the man was standing beside me. It said to me, O mortal. So now we know who he's been talking to, although we knew before from earlier chapters, we figured it out. But now we know without a doubt who he has been hearing from and who he's been talking to in these messages all along. He's been talking to the presence of Elohim. He's been talking to Yeshua HaMashiach, pre-incarnate form. It said to me, O mortal, this is the place of my throne and the place for the soles of my feet, where I will dwell in the midst of my people, Yisrael, forever. Okay? And we've talked about this all through the book, but forever means without end. Okay? It doesn't mean until something comes to replace this promise. And we hear that a lot in the mainline churches, that this truth has been replaced by something supposedly greater. Forever doesn't end. They at Yisrael and their kings must not again defile my holy name by their apostasy and by the corpses of their kings at their death. Now, this is one of the passages that the Orthodox and ultra-Orthodox Rabbim have used to justify not saying or writing the name Yehovah. Okay? They say, oh, we must stop defiling his holy name. We must stop using it as apostasy. That's not what he's saying here. In fact, elsewhere in Scripture it says that only when all of Beit Yisrael calls upon his name is the perfect kingdom going to come. He says, in that day, that's when that happens, that's when the kingdom is going to come. By not teaching the sacred name, those Rabbim are preventing the promise. Just like we read in the previous teaching in Genesis, we talked about we have to keep the ways of Yehovah so that he can bless the world through us. This is the same thing. We have to have a right understanding. We have to rightly divide the word of truth. Okay? Using his holy name is not defiling it or apostasy. We defile it when we do apostasy, and it says, and, this is kind of like an and specifically thing in the Hebrew, and I'll say specifically, by the corpses of their kings at their death. Now, the kings of Yisrael had begun to take on the practices, when they were still in the land, had begun to take on the practices of some foreign kings. Okay? And they had begun to have special burial rites that had nothing to do with Scripture. It says, when they placed their threshold next to my threshold and their doorposts next to my doorposts, with only a wall between me and them, they would defile my holy name by the abominations that they committed, and I consumed them in my anger. This is what was happening. Very close to the temple, on the opposite side of the wall. And if you understand my theory that the western wall, as they call it, is actually the eastern wall, if you understand my theory about the slope, actually it wasn't my theory, but I believe it's true. Ron White's theory about the descent of the slope and the direction the blood would have had to run. If it's the western wall, the blood would have to run uphill. But if you move over and if you make it the eastern wall, the blood can run the right direction. Okay, and that's a whole other study. But on the other side of a wall, I think is probably that eastern wall that's still standing, they had begun to entomb their kings, not exactly as mummies, but they had begun to preserve their bodies. Okay? At least that's what I've read in my research. That they had begun to entomb them according to the rites of foreign kings, And they had placed the entrance to this place, which basically became a temple to the king, whether the people really thought of it that way or not. They had placed the entrance to the place near to the temple. So not only were they doing an abominable, unholy act, they were doing it right in the presence of the temple, right in the place that was supposed to be reserved and sanctified for him. And he says, because they did that, I destroyed them in my anger. As far as we know, the only legitimate Davidic line that still exists today, he had, how many children did he have? And Solomon had 300 wives and 400 concubines. How many did he have? There were so many legitimate heirs that they could never have run out of heirs. And yet the only, as far as we know, the only traceable, legitimate line is the line of Scotia that Yirmiyahu snuck out of the kingdom at the fall. The only one. The house of David was utterly destroyed, and yet a remnant remains. Why he consumed them in his anger is because they were beginning to act like pharaohs. Therefore, let them put their apostasy and the corpses of their kings far from me, and I will dwell among them forever. Okay? This is an if-then statement. If you want to keep your kings and their bodies entombed in this way and basically worship them, well, it's fine. When you're in trouble, call on them. Oh, wait, they didn't answer, now you're in captivity? Put those abominations away from me, and I will dwell with you forever. How simple is that? That has nothing to do with whether or not we write or utter the name Yehovah. Does everybody see that? He plainly says what caused it and what we have to do to fix it, and they've turned it into this, don't use the sacred name. You, O mortal, describe the temple to Beit Yisrael, and let them measure its design. But let them be ashamed of their iniquities. When they are ashamed of all they have done, make known to them the plan of the temple and its layout, its exits and entrances, its entire plan, and all the laws and instructions pertaining to its entire plan. Write it down before their eyes, that they may faithfully follow its entire plan and its laws. Does that mean we get to pick and choose what we follow? No. Its entire plan. Follow this entire plan. Follow the entire plan. You can't make it any more clear. You know that saying, all means all, and that's all means? Entire means all, and that's all entire means. Such are the instructions for the temple on top of the mountain. The entire area of its enclosure shall be most holy. Thus far are the instructions of the temple. And these are the dimensions of the altar. Let's stop right there for a second. How many chapters has he spent explaining the design of the temple, and he never got to the altar? I think this is also kind of an if-then statement. If you stop defiling my holy name with these abominable acts, then you get to see the temple. And the temple is a grand thing. But if you don't follow all the laws of the temple, I'm not going to bother to tell you how to build my altar. You know, some people get upset when I say that truth is often revealed in stages. Sometimes it's revealed to husband/father, and it takes the family a time to get it. Sometimes it's revealed to the elders of a congregation, and it takes the rest of the congregation time to get it. Sometimes it's revealed to one prophet in part and another prophet in other parts, and another prophet is able to put it together and show us the full picture. In this case, he's given the plan for the temple, and he says only when Israel takes these laws seriously, only then will I care to show them my altar. Because this is most holy, but this is the holy of holies. This is what I command you to be, and this is what I am. And these are the dimensions of the altar in cubits, where each is a cubit and a handbreadth. Wow. So we discussed in earlier chapters, there's a common cubit, there's a royal cubit. We determined that we were talking about royal cubits for the design of the temple, but get this. Even the royal cubit that was used to measure that fortress of worship, that palace of prayer, even the royal cubit was not enough to be the type of cubit that was going to be used to design the altar. So we're going to have a cubit that is a royal cubit plus a hand's breadth. How many inches do you think that is? 7? 8? More? A royal cubit, 2.5 feet, plus the average breadth of a man's hand. I guess this would be the breadth, wouldn't it? That'd be the span. The breadth. Okay? So what do you think that is? 5 inches? 6 inches? So we're going to take the royal cubit and we're going to add to it, and that will be the measurement of the altar. So that nothing else in the entire world, nothing else in the entire universe probably is measured with that measurement. That's how special this is. The trench shall be a cubit deep and a cubit wide, with a rim 1 span high around its edge, and the height shall be as follows. From the trench in the ground to the lower ledge, which shall be a cubit wide, 2 cubits from the lower ledge to the upper ledge, which shall likewise be a cubit wide, 4 cubits, and the height of the altar hearth shall be 4 cubits with 4 horns projecting upward from the hearth. Four cubits. Sorry, they project upward 4 cubits. Now the hearth shall be 12 cubits long and 12 broad, square with 4 equal sides. You know what this sounds like when I read it? I look at it, 12 long, 12 wide, perfect square, picture of New Jerusalem, 12 foundations, 12 gates, perfect square. Everybody kind of see how this is? Okay, and the New Jerusalem is going to be what? The center of the world. Just like the Holy of Holies is the center of all worship. Hence, the upper base shall be 14 cubits broad, with 4 equal sides. The surrounding rim shall be half a cubit high, and the surrounding trench shall measure 1 cubit, and the ramp shall face, get this, it shall face east. You know why? Because when the presence of Yehovah enters the temple, when the king of the nation enters the temple, they enter from the east. Remember last week we talked about the inside of the temple is like a labyrinth. It's specifically designed so if you're not a priest and you don't know how to get through all those passages, you're going to get lost. But if you do know how to get through it, it's easily defensible. It's when the temple was the only part of the city that didn't fall when we went into exile. The entrance of the king and of the presence of Elohim is a direct access to the Holy of Holies. I'm not saying it's a straight, like immediate, like you walk in. That's not how it was laid out. But if you came through the eastern gate and you knew where you were going, you could be there very quickly. You didn't have to go through all that other mess. But only the people who knew that would be able to use that information. Then he said to me, O mortal, thus said Yehovah Elohim, these are the directions for the altar on the day it is erected, so that burnt offerings may be offered up on it and blood dashed against it. You shall give to the Levitical priests who are of the stock of Zadok, and so eligible to minister to me. Remember, because he was the only one who was faithful, so only his descendants got to be a part of it, of the priesthood anymore, the high priesthood. Declares Yehovah Elohim, a young bull of the herd of a sin, for a sin offering. You shall take some of its blood and apply it to the four horns of the altar, to the four corners of the base, and to the surrounding rim. Thus you shall purge it and perform purification upon it. Then you shall take the bull of sin offering and burn it in its designated area of the temple outside the sanctuary. On the following day you shall offer a goat without blemish as a sin offering, and the altar shall be purged with it, just as it was purged with the bull. When you have completed the ritual of purging, you shall offer a bull of the herd without blemish and a ram of the flock without blemish. Offer them to Yehovah. Let the priests throw salt on them and offer them as a burnt offering to Yehovah. Every day for 7 days you shall present a goat of sin offering, as well as a bull of the herd and a ram of the flock. You shall present unblemished ones. 7 days they shall purge the altar and cleanse it. Thus shall it be consecrated. And when these days are over, then from the 8th day onward, the priest shall offer your burnt offerings and your offerings of well-being on the altar, and I will extend my favor to you, declares Yehovah Elohim. It's again an if-then statement. If you do all of these things, if you consecrate this place, this location, and make it holy, if you do these things for purging to make it holy for 7 days, and if on the 8th day you offer to me what I command, then the land and the people shall be sanctified. You know what this is a picture of, or what we have today is a picture of this? There is a commandment to fathers and mothers. If we will make our home sanctified, then if he will give to us a son, and if we will do the things that we are to do for 7 days, and if on the 8th day we follow the command of blood, then our son will be sanctified. Commandment is different for female children. There is a process for the sanctification of female children, for daughters. But Jewish heritage, Israelite heritage, is commanded to be counted from father to son. This is a picture. The temple, the sanctification of the altar is a picture of what he wants for every one of us in our lives. And so rarely does anybody preach on this. So rarely does anyone teach on it. So rarely does I never heard any of this. Never heard it in a church. Never heard it from a radio preacher. Never read it in a theology book. And then when I was in Ragma International, Dr. von Ochner had a teaching on this. And it forever changed my understanding of the temple. Because the temple, yes, it is all the things I've been saying it is. It is the place of worship, the place for the soles of his feet, the place where he to sit in his feet. It is all of those things. It is a fortress to defend the priesthood. It is all of these things, and it is a picture of his plan for humanity. That's why there is a court for the men, and a court for the women, and a court for the Gentiles. Because it's even his will that the Goyim should be sanctified if they will accept the covenant. But they're never going to see the covenant until we're living it, until we're sanctified, until we're obeying his word, until our children are being raised up in his word and they see that something is different. And that's, I believe, why the Holy of Holies is at the very heart of everything that he's been describing here, because it's not what the world says, taking everything from the outside and kind of assimilate to the culture and blend in. That's not his commandment. His commandment is that we start by being holy, and we let all the holiness that he will give us needs to emanate out, needs to be what we show to them. And if we will do that, then he will extend his favor to us. Do we have a midrash on this?
I think the cubit's about 3 feet then.
You think the extended with the handbreadth cubit is about 3 feet?
Yeah.
Okay. I'll give you guys something you can do a little math there. Try to figure out the exact dimensions.
I was kind of figuring out.
Anybody else? You know, that means that like basically it's 36 by 36 feet. That's roughly, I think, the length of this building squared. That's pretty huge.
Mm-hmm.
Anybody else? Okay.